One of the most common groups of questions I get asked are around setting up a KDP account. Things like, should I do this as an individual or a company? What tax information do they need? Or can I even do this in the country where I live? And these are very important questions because if you don't get it right, then KDP may not even allow you to set up an account, or it could have significant financial implications for yourself. Now, this is going to be important information whether you've not yet set up your account, or you may have even set up your account but not quite sure whether you've done things correctly. So we're going to look at this in three sections. One is the personal information KDP requires, the bank account information they require, and the tax information that they require. And this is going to be dependent particularly on the country you live in. And I'm going to do this from the perspective of what I did when I set up my account. Now, you may have guessed, I'm not a financial advisor, I'm not an accountant, nor a tax advisor. So what I would suggest doing is listening to the information I'm going to give and then taking advice from a qualified accountant, financial advisor, tax advisor, whatever, so you do get this correct from the start. So if you've not yet set up an account, go to kdp.amazon.com and click on sign up, and it's completely free of charge to set up a KDP account. And the first lot of information they're going to require is the author/publisher information. And the first thing they're going to want to know is whether you're going to do this as an individual or a corporation, which is a company. And there's pros and cons to both. Now, if you do this as an individual, the advantage is it's pretty easy. There's no real extra paperwork you need to do. You just need to put down your personal information into those boxes. The disadvantages of doing it as an individual is that depending on your current employment status, you may end up paying more tax on the royalties that you receive from Amazon. That is, if you're currently working a job and you're a high tax rate payer, then any extra income you receive is most likely going to be also taxed at that higher rate. Also, as an individual, there's less expenses that you can write off for tax on the income that you receive. So the other option is to do this as a company. Now, the advantages of doing it as a company is there's often, or could be, less tax to pay. Again, that would more come in if you are a high rate taxpayer in a job. Now, the tax rate or the corporation tax rate that you're going to pay is going to be dependent on the country you live in. Now, in the UK, it used to be 19%. Now, it currently is 19% in the UK if you earn less than £50,000. Anything above that increases up to 25% maximum. Now, I said I'm not an accountant, but that's what I've interpreted from the information that I've read. In Australia, corporation tax rate is a standard 25% for most companies. And so you would have to weigh up whether that would be an advantage to you. The other thing is, setting up as a company does look more professional. It may be useful, for instance, if you're setting up a brand. You also, in a lot of cases, have limited liability. So we mostly on this channel publish low content, no content, medium content books. But if you were thinking about publishing content that may be a bit controversial, where you may be, for instance, say, doing a book on something medical, where you may be giving medical advice, where there may be a chance that someone could come along and sue you, then it may be an advantage to you to be set up as a company so that you do have limited liability. Again, this is not something I'm an expert on, and you would need to seek legal advice on that. Also, if you do this as a company, you could create something that you could sell in the future. And also as a company, there may be more scope for writing off expenses on your tax. The disadvantages of setting up a company are there's extra paperwork. You need to set up the company in the first place, and that could cost money. And also there are ongoing paperwork requirements for the company, and there's ongoing, obviously, tax requirements for the company. So this is also going to cost more in terms of fees, and also you'll find that there's extra accountancy fees as well. Now, I do find a lot of people spend a lot of time thinking and going back and forth on whether they should do this as an individual or a corporation, and can sometimes waste weeks, if not months, on this, thinking whether they, should set up this company because they're going to be earning all this money from Amazon, yet they've not even created a single product to sell. Now, what did I do? Well, I actually started off as an individual. I was in the UK at the time, and this was termed a sole trader. And it wasn't until I started earning a regular income on top of my job that I thought, okay, it's now worth it for me to spend some money on getting some accountancy advice, on setting up a company. And overall, it was going to save me money in the long term with the slightly lower rate of tax I was paying at that time compared to the higher rate of tax I was paying from my job. So the take home from this is look at what your current financial situation is and whether it's going to be worth your time and money and hassle in creating a company, whether you're actually going to get a financial benefit from it. If you've not yet created a product, you're not even earning money, then I found for myself it was better just to start up as a sole trader, as an individual, and then see what actually happens. I didn't want to waste money up front going creating all this account when I hadn't even, brought in any money from the business at all. So the next lot of information they're going to need is this section here on getting paid. That is the bank account information. So a lot of people do ask me, can I do this in the country wherever, you're living? And it basically comes down to whether you have a bank account in that country that Amazon accepts. Now, there is a help page here. I'll leave a link to it down below in the description on the KDP payment options. Now, they say they can pay direct deposit into a bank, wire transfer into a bank, or send a check out. And they give information here on the different areas around the world. But I find a lot of people ask me, with regards to the situation of not having a bank account. Now, obviously, I don't know in detail because I've not been in that situation myself. But what I can tell you is experience from others that they've told me. And I know some people have managed to receive payment into a Payoneer account and also into a Wise account. So if those are options that are available to you, that may be something that might allow you to provide bank details and open up a KDP account. Now, the third area of information that KDP requires is the tax information. And this is where things get a little bit more complicated because it's going to depend on the country that you live in. Now, if you're in the US, I think things are a bit more simple, but KDP is, as far as I'm aware, going to require your TIN or tax identification number. So what happens if you're in another country? Well, you have to supply the equivalent of the TIN. Now, I don't know what this is in all the different countries that are out there in the world. I don't know how many countries there are. Is it 192, 193? But I can tell you from the perspective of the UK, that'd be the equivalent of your unique tax reference number, which you would get from the HMRC. Here in Australia, it's a TFN or tax file number, again, which you get from the Australian Tax Office. Now, if you decided that you're in a country, you don't have a tax number and you don't want to provide a tax number to KDP, what I think would happen is that KDP or Amazon would then withhold tax from the royalties that they pay out to you. And that rate at the moment, from what I understand, is 30%. Now, if you are in a country where you can provide a tax number, your country may have a tax treaty with the US, which means the amount of tax that Amazon withholds may be a lot less and maybe even zero. And you can get an idea of what this would be by going to a website. And here we have an example of such a website from Deloitte.com. So in step one, you would type in the jurisdiction, which is the United States, and then you would choose which country you're in. So we'll tick none, and I will tick Australia. And then you select the treaty status. So I would click active, and then the income type. And so we can choose royalties, which is what we're going to be receiving from Amazon. And then click on submit. And here you can see it says 5, which is 5%, which means living here in Australia, any royalties I receive, Amazon would withhold 5% of that. Now, again, discussing with an accountant, that may then affect the amount of tax that you actually pay on the royalties you receive. Let's look at a different situation. Again, United States. This time we'll choose United Kingdom. Active, again, royalties, update. And you can see this is 0. So if you're living, doing KDP in the UK and you provide your tax number, then Amazon shouldn't be withholding any royalties. So you can play around on this site and just pick which country you're living in and see if Amazon would withhold any taxes from the royalties that you receive from the sales of your books. So when you're setting up your account and you click on this view/provide tax information, if you are overseas from the US, then you're going to have to fill out what's called a W8BEN form, which looks something like this. It looks quite complicated, but it's not. Basically what they want is your name, address, and your foreign tax identifying number, which is that number that I've just discussed, and is going to be different depending on where you live in the world. And when you're filling this out, KDP or Amazon makes it very simple because they just ask you for those relevant areas of information, and it automatically fills out the form for you, and it will tell you straight away whether it's all done correctly and whether your tax information submission is successful. So once you've done that, you should be good to go. You can start creating books, and any royalties you receive, you should receive without problem into your bank account with or without any withholding taxes removed from that amount. Again, it's something that I would really recommend discussing with an accountant or tax advisor at some point to make sure you have got all this correct, especially if you are starting to earn significant amount of money from KDP. Now, if you are a complete beginner to this business of publishing medium, low, no content books on Amazon, then what I suggest doing is starting with this playlist here, where I go through all the steps of creating, uploading and publishing no content, low content books on Amazon. Thank you very much for your time. It is very much appreciated. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and until next time, goodbye.